Welcome back to the Music Maestro Podcast, a behind-the-scenes look at the music industry. Today we have a visionary entrepreneur who is revolutionizing music licensing as the CEO and co-founder of Licked. With over 2 decades of experience in the music business, he's now providing a game-changing platform that simplifies commercial music licensing for social video creators. This is Paul Sampson. Hello, mate.
Hello, how are you?
Very good, thank you. Thanks for coming on. That was quite an intro I thought I did for you. I prepared that.
I liked visionary. That was
did you
good.
like visionary?
You
entrepreneur.
Say that more.
So, listen, Licked. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about it. I think before we get into that, I do want to start at the beginning for you. Mm-hmm. So, to get straight into it, let's talk about, let's start at the beginning. And I guess how you found your way at Licked, if we can do that, fast track that. Let's talk about your path into the music industry.
Okay, I started off out of university in television.
What did you study at university?
Not a lot.
Okay.
Politics.
Okay.
And then I found myself at the end of my third year in the library going, am I going to be a politician? And this was 1999. And we'd just had New Labour. We'd just seen all the vile Tories that had been in the sex scandals and taking cash for questions and all of that. And I thought, actually, the biggest problem in politics is that people aren't in it for the greater good. There's too many people in it for their own self-interest. And I couldn't guarantee that wouldn't be in my MO as well. So I decided to save the British public from politics. And then I decided to have a go at television. I got a job at a production company. I stayed there for 5 years. I started moving boxes. I ended up a series producer. I did development in the middle, which means writing shows. I got a couple of shows made. I even had a couple of shows as host. So I had a dating show that I presented on ITV.
Amazing. So this is not unnatural for you?
Not well. I mean, it's been a while, but yeah, I had a dating show on ITV. I had a sports show on Sky, and then I remember.
You were presenters of these shows?
Yeah, on ITV.
So in fact, you must be on YouTube somewhere.
Yes.
Amazing. Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, don't look. It was like late night student fodder. It wasn't credible television. But halfway through that, I was on a shoot with a director, and then he got sick, and he was supposed to be in the edit the next day. And they called me at home and said, can you come in tomorrow and help the editor direct the edit? Because you were on the shoot. And I got very excited. I went home and I took all these CDs off the shelves on my wall. I thought, I'm going to put that song in that scene and that song in that scene. And I came in the next day and walked into the edit suite with an armful of CDs. And the editor said to me, what you got there? And I said, that's the music I'm going to put in the show. And he said, we have a music budget? And I said, no, I paid for these CDs. I own them. And he said to me, Paul, you own the plastic. It was the most patronising anyone's ever been to.
Yeah.
You own the plastic. You don't own the music. And I remember being really disappointed that I couldn't use any song I want on my favourite music. And we'll get into it, but I can draw a straight but dotted line from that moment to what I'm doing now. When I look back, I can see the thread.
So you started as a TV producer off the back of being at university studying politics, correct?
Yes. Yeah.
I guess how have you gone from being a TV producer to getting into music?
So I used to, that very day, the editor said to me, you can use any of this music. And he pointed to walls and walls and shelves of stock music, production music, as we call it in the UK, stock music in the US.
Yeah. And
I became quickly au fait with all of them, right? All of those providers that we know of. And eventually I built up quite a good relationship with one of those companies in particular, a company called Extreme Music.
Yeah.
And someone there offered me a job in New York. And so January 2005, I moved to the US, and I did my first day in music licensing. And I took to it like a duck to water, really. I was really good at it because I knew what TV production people wanted because I'd been one. I knew the Extremes catalogue and all my competitors' catalogue because I'd had to use it all.
Yeah.
And I knew how to create the point of difference because I knew all the catalogues. Plus, it was a way of earning money, being professional, not wearing a suit and living in New York. So what was not to like? And that went well. 2.5 years later, I was head of the West Coast, head of US, moved out to LA. And in that period, we worked with, even though it was production music, and I'm not taking the credit for this, by the way. This is definitely the vision of their CEO, a guy called Russell. He managed to make stock music a lot higher quality, and he did that by recognizing that commercial music artists had lost 80% of their sales revenues after the advent of Napster and then iTunes. And that they were on the lookout for more commercial opportunities. And so he would go to them and explain to them, like if you went to, I don't know if you know this, but Kellogg's makes Sainsbury's own brand cornflakes.
No.
Okay. So if you're Kellogg's, you're saying Sainsbury's, you're going to undercut me. You know your customer better than me. You're going to put out crap products. Why don't you just let us do it? We'll go 50-50 on it, right? But I'm not going to put any... We're not going to design it very well.
Yeah.
And it's not going to have any of the other stuff. It's not going to be quite as tasty as ours. It's not going to be quite as...
Yeah,
right?
okay.
So on and so forth. But it doesn't want to lose its market share.
Yeah.
You explain that to a music artist and you say, look, these people are making money off recreating your sound.
Yeah.
Because it's really difficult, complicated, litigious, and expensive to license your music and go through all the necessary parties. And so we've created an off-the-shelf version. Now, if you can help us recreate your sound, not by writing it, because then it belongs to your publisher, not by performing it or recording it, because then it belongs to your label, but help us curate music using your producers and your co-writers and so on and so forth, right? Then we can take your name and market that to the advertising agencies, the TV production companies. And so Hans Zimmer ended up doing Extreme's film score. Quincy Jones did their Black Roots music. Snoop Dogg did their West Coast hip hop. Exhibit worked with them. I think a couple of guys from Massive Attack did their trip hop. And
doesn't get much bigger than that, right?
Exactly. They did change the game a bit, and now quite a few of these companies work in that way.
Yeah.
But again, I was able to win massive market share with them because I saw the value of good marketing, good branding, and commercial music one-stop shop licensing.
Yeah. That's
really all anyone wants. Anyone that wants to license music wants as few steps as possible and all the rights cleared. Mm-hmm. Now, that's almost impossible with major label and even any commercial music because there's so many... it's such a fragmented rights landscape in the commercial sector.
Let's touch on this briefly because whilst people that are watching, most people might understand, I guess... maybe these guys, Nikesh, Sophie, in terms of music licensing, I've got a interest in it, always have done based on my career. But actually, when I think of music licensing for most people, I think it's probably fucking boring, right? Sync licensing, like what? I mean, most people don't even know what that is. So if you're talking about music licensing, specifically in this instance, sync licensing, what is sync licensing?
So, sync is short for synchronization. It's the synchronization of music to picture and the rendering of that music to that picture. Simply put, every piece of content you've ever seen or ever loved has music in it. Someone is responsible for the creative pitching of that music into that content. And if they are successful at that, the subsequent licensing of the necessary rights and the negotiation of the fees that go with those rights. That's about as short as I can explain.
Good. Yeah, no, it's good. Okay, and I guess the other thing with licensing is like you've touched on is like it's not just going to Sony Music and licensing a song from them because I guess there are two sides to licensing, master and publishing, right? And obviously on the publishing side as well, it's not always one publisher even for one song. I mean, you've got many songwriters, right?
Yes.
So makes it always feels like a bit of a minefield.
It is, and so when laymen ask me to explain why it's so difficult, I always give them the example of my way. Because there's Elvis's version and there's Sinatra's version. Yeah. And there's many other versions. Yeah. But I say to them, you'll always go to a different label. You'll go to Elvis's label for his recording and Sinatra's label for his recording because labels represent the recording. Yeah. But the publisher represents the writer and the underlying intellectual property of the song, the notes, the melody, and the IP. Yeah. And so if you want to license Elvis's version, you go to Elvis's label. and the publisher. If you want to license Sinatra's version, you go to Sinatra's label, but you're going back to the same publisher. It's the same publisher every time. They own the rights to the music.
Okay, interesting. There you go. So we're Extreme Music, then you moved to Eskimo Live, right?
Yeah, so I moved back from the States in 2010. My sister had a conversation with someone at Live Nation. They were looking for some people to help them license brands backstage and even front of house at festivals. So I just did that freelance for a couple of years under the banner of Eskimo Live, just saying, look, going up to brands and asking them if they wanted to have an activation front of house at a festival, or even backstage, like an artist gifting area or a branded backstage area for artists. So I did that for a couple of years.
And then to music dealers?
And then I knew the guys at music dealers. They had tried to poach me from Extreme out in LA a few times. Mm-hmm. When I moved back to London, they eventually said, well, we're going to open in Europe. We want you to launch it for us. So they had an equally compelling, if not more compelling, proposition than Extreme, in that they had a very commercial sounding catalogue because it was in fact commercial music, in that it was unsigned independent artists. So what they said was, hey, if all of you independent artists who can't get syncs on your own upload your music to this portal, we will act as one company with this huge catalogue, and that will get us in front of music supervisors and big broadcast networks, and we can then present a whole catalogue to them of music that is real by real artists from various countries, all pre-cleared, one-stop shop licensed, and we can start scaling revenue for your catalogue.
Okay. How long were you at music dealers?
5 years, 6 years.
Wow.
Yeah.
And then Q Songs?
Yeah, Q Songs is like I don't know, it's an asterisk on my CV. Bless them. Listen, I only say that because I think the underlying premise of Q Songs was really good, which is why I went. But I was only there 6 months. Before they went under. So they asked me to come in and help pivot the business. I came up with a consumer-facing licensing platform. And that would entail ripping up everything that they had done to date because the platform couldn't house what I was envisioning. And they backed it. And then one of the investors fell away and the company went into administration.
Right.
And by that point, I had fallen in love with the concept. And it's different to what Licked is. And it evolved over the next 6 months as I sort of worked on the business model. But once I had that thought, I couldn't get it out of my head. That all the resources of big production companies had already been democratized to the living room, right? You could shoot on a high grade home camera in 2015, 2016. You can now shoot high quality content on your phone. You don't need an editor or an edit suite. You can do it all yourself on your laptop. The only really major resource that hadn't been democratized in line with the others was music licensing.
Yeah.
And when you realize UGC, user-generated content, is the fastest growing production sector in the world, that's nonsense. And it's not going anywhere. It's only growing in importance and in size. And so you have to try and, A, solve that problem, and B, future-proof the industry. And that was my goal when I came up with Licked.
Wow. Okay. So quite a career there. And obviously there's a big focus on what you're doing now with Licked, and we're going to get into it, like I say. But during your time there, am I right in thinking you went from working from London, New York, LA, back to London?
Yes.
How was that?
It was great.
Yeah.
Brilliant, man. I always say that if you carved central London out of London and put it in the Channel, you'd have Manhattan, right? Like a place that you can't build outwards, you've got to build up.
Yeah.
But all the fun, you just moved into the water, right?
Yeah.
That's Manhattan. What you've got left is a really cool city with loads of really cool places, no centre, and they're a pain in the arse to get to.
Yeah.
That's LA.
Yeah.
And if you move it to the Pacific and 72 and sunny, it's viable. And so everything that's great about New York is absent from LA, and everything that's great about LA is absent from New York. But that's why it's quite interesting to live in both.
Did you have a preference on which one you worked in? As in, out of the two, which would you enjoy more, I guess?
Then New York. Now, I don't think I could live in Manhattan again. It would kill me.
Yeah.
And also, you have to be like, unless you're willing to live like a student or you're a multi-millionaire, it's quite depressing living in Manhattan. Like it's 10 grand for a 1-bed apartment like, a month, by the way.
Okay. Yeah. So one of the things I want to go back to before we get into Licked is obviously you've kind of got your career, which sort of started in TV before you came into this music licensing thing organically. It feels like. But when you were growing up, like what were the kind of musical influences around you?
I grew up with a Greek family. Mm-hmm. So most of the music, if we played music, and my parents were sort of hardworking, working class immigrants that didn't really come home and play music a lot.
Yeah.
If they did, it was Greek music that I didn't understand.
Yeah.
When I was 12 or 13, my then brother-in-law, came to me with 2 CDs that he'd bought because they'd been recommended to him and they had explicit content on them and that appealed to him.
Yeah.
He hated them and he said, "Do you want them?" And I said, "Yes." And those albums were Nevermind by Nirvana and Doggy Style by Snoop Dogg. And I fell in love. I didn't know music could be like that. When you're 13 years old, you haven't met sort of anyone from an alternative culture.
Yeah.
You didn't know that's what music was supposed to or could do to you. And so I fell in love with grunge and hip hop out of nowhere, like overnight. I mean, he didn't give it to me on the same day, by the way, but I learned almost every word to Doggy Style, the album, which, as I said to you before, which was weird. This fat little Greek kid in his bedroom in North London, thinking he was in Compton, or acting like he was in Compton. But I loved it. Yeah. And from there, I fell in love. That was the 90s. I fell in love with Biggie. And I fell in love with hip hop and R&B, and then by the time it hit the mid 90s, I discovered breakbeat and house music, and that changed my life.
Yeah, massive. And I guess so. At this stage, then, where everyone obviously loves music, and I always say it, but did you think back then when you kind of were into this music, into these artists, into these genres, did you ever think about that a career and that might be a thing? No,
I didn't know there was I don't think anyone knew it was a thing. Like you go to school and you do economics, and you do maths and geography. Like no one's telling you can go and work in the music industry. Yeah. You're not seeing anyone from the music industry as a job until the age of 16, 17 when like Pop Idol came out, and I was like, oh, people work behind it, right? You don't just come up with a song and then become a global superstar.
Yeah.
I think that was the first time I'd seen anyone working in the industry. No, I had no idea. Okay. Younger, I wanted to be a footballer, and then I thought maybe television or something like that. But I really found my stride when I came into the music industry.
Okay, then. So, Licked is where we're at. You are CEO and did you founder or co-founder?
Co-founder / seed investor. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. You summed it up beautifully before we started to Nikesh and Sophie. Spotify for video creators.
Yeah.
How did you? I mean, what is Licked?
Okay, so Licked is the world's first mainstream music licensing platform for creators. There's a specific problem that Licked solves, and that is that if you earn money from YouTube, we use the term YouTubers. What you're referring to there are people that make money from YouTube, not just an income, not just those that make their living from YouTube. Some people just make good pocket money from it. If you use a famous song in your YouTube video, you will get a copyright claim. If you get a copyright claim, you will lose all of the income owed to you from that video by way of the copyright claim, and it will be sent not to you, but to the music industry. YouTube presumes that all music use on its platform is a copyright infringement. And the reason it does that is because there is nowhere in the world to license all of the rights you need to act legally. And so in lieu of a platform like Licked, it says, well, it must be a copyright infringement because there's no way you can get the rights.
Yeah.
So if I want to solve that problem that I mentioned before, why should the fastest growing production sector in the world, UGC, not have access to mainstream music like other production sectors? Then I've got to do two things. One, you've got to build Spotify, but with the rights to license music, i.e., by that I mean a platform where you can search, audition, and play music, but crucially, be able to license the legal rights to use it in your content. Two, there's no good giving you those rights if you then go on YouTube and Content ID doesn't know you've got the rights. And so we had to build proprietary software which integrates into the YouTube CMS via the API and into the YouTube CMS of the master rights distributing parties, i.e. labels and distributors who deliver us music, integrate our software, and it allows them to put a custom policy on any song they're sending to us within the YouTube CMS. And that policy tells Content ID, hey, this song is now legally available. Don't presume it's an infringement. Consult with Lict's database. And so if you take any song on Lict, within YouTube, it has that custom policy on it, as opposed to before it was on Lict, it would have just had a monetized policy on it.
Yeah.
Right? And so now, every time YouTube finds that song in any video in the world, it will consult with our database before deciding what to do next.
Okay.
Whereas before, it just would have gone ahead on its own and made a bad decision.
Where did the name Lict come from?
That's a good question. I get asked this a lot. It's not salacious in any way. The company... so if you look at... Can I go back a bit?
Yeah.
When I looked at what was happening in our space, in lieu of the availability of any good music, content creators had been forced into using stock music en masse. If you want to know how a stock music company with 40,000 tracks can get a $1.4 billion valuation, look at the commercial music sector, because they forced all these content creators into Epidemic's hands.
Yeah. And
into Soundstripe, Artlist, MusicBed, right? And these guys provided content creators with a much needed and decent solution. But it's a workaround. It's not the solution. What people want are the hits.
Yeah.
When you look at all those companies, I just named them: MusicBed, Artlist, right?
Yeah.
Epidemic, Sound, Extreme, Music Dealers, Q, Songs. They're all B2B. They're not brands. They're not consumer-facing brands. And although these YouTube creators are small businesses, you have to market to them as millennials and Gen Z like their consumers, because they have no business address and they're going to find you on socials. And that's essentially a B2C marketing activity. So I wanted a brand. The company was initially called Hooked, Hookd. No E, again, that's what both names have in common.
Yeah.
But I wanted a brand. I wanted something that millennials could get on board with, that they would think was cool, that they could make a verb out of it if they wanted to, right? I hooked it. How did you use that music? I hooked it, right?
Yeah.
3 weeks before launch, I get a cease and desist. We've just built everything. We're ready to go. And a company with a not dissimilar name, not in music, but they won. They sent me a cease and desist, and when we got our lawyers over a table, I lost.
Right. That's not the social agency Hooked, is it?
The Hook.
There's a social agency.
No, the social agency is called Be Hooked.
Oh, Be Hooked. That's right.
This one was called The Hook, and they create content. They're a video publisher on Facebook, essentially.
Yeah.
But they have created content for the labels. And so, because the music industry was a client and they make videos for social, they were like, it's too close, mate. It's too close.
Yeah.
And to be fair to them, they had lost their name in a trademark dispute and had to rebrand, and they weren't going to let me trespass on that. Anyway.
Yeah.
So I spent a lot of money going to a branding agency going, like, my board's going to go mad. I've got 3 weeks to launch, and we have to rebrand the entire company. And she's this lovely, amazing woman, really super smart, taught me through the process. She said, we'll come up with loads of names. We'll come up with potential logos for all of them. But you're going to end up coming up with something as a result of the work we do that you're going to love more than what we give you. And it's probably the one to go with. And we went in 2 weeks later, and we looked at all these names, and it wasn't quite there. But they had an emoji with the tongue out. Right? And I was like, none of these quite work. And I just looked at it and I was like, it's not there. Like, we need to, like, hooked. The reason I used hooks because there's hooks in music. Right?
Yeah.
So I wanted a music connotation, and I was like hooks, like riffs, like guitar, like licks. And I said licks, and I was like licked. Licked means problem solved. Don't worry about it. I got that licked.
Yeah.
And I was like, we're solving a problem in the music space. There's a music connotation, 5 letters, just like hooks.
Yeah.
I can rebrand real quick.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
And so we went with licked. And then they gave me a logo of licked on an angle in a box, which looks like a stamp.
Yeah.
And I was like, stamp of approval. If I've got my music licked, I'm copyright claims free. I've solved the problem. I'm good to go.
No, I like the name. I like the branding. It's all great. You've kind of already answered the question in terms of how you came up with the idea, I think. What impact has Licked had on the industry so far?
Well, there were 10,000 labels and publishers signed to Licked. If I'm honest with you, that's a number I couldn't have possibly ever fathomed.
Yeah.
And only now do I realise it's nowhere near enough. It's there or thereabouts enough. But what impact have we had? We have helped break some acts, or at least impacted their early careers. We have delivered much better streaming numbers for music that's on the platform, because when artists are used in a big creator's video, we typically see all the ancillary or associated industry KPIs positively impacted. And I think we've won the trust and support of most, but not all, I must say that, most of the music industry. I mean, we have Universal and Warner label and publishing, with BMG, Cobalt, and then all the big indies and mid-sized indies, and then the long tail of distributors as well. There were 1.5 million songs live on Licked and 9.5 million delivered waiting to go live, and deliveries coming in all the time, every day.
Yeah.
So my goal is to make every song available. Licked's
to actually be the Spotify, right?
Yeah.
For video creators. Yeah.
Licked's mission is democratize music for the world's creators.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just mean UGC. I've got plans way beyond what we're doing now. But I think we've had a positive impact. And I think we license more music than probably any other entity in Europe. But we're doing it at such high volume, but really low fees, to make it accessible to the wider community.
So you spoke about the UGC side, and I guess in terms of when you're looking at the future, there was I guess an announcement that you made on LinkedIn recently, right? Yeah. Brands want to use great music on their social posts, but there's no easy way to do it. Over the years, some have been sued for their misuse of music on TikTok and Reels. This, allied with Licked's mission to democratize music for the world's creators, has led to another first of its kind and another problem solved.
Yes.
So this is the next phase for Licked.
Yeah, Licked for brands.
Yeah. What can you tell us about it?
I can tell you that the prototype and the beta has been launched, has been built under advisement and in partnership with a major label. That all 3 major labels have told me that they are suffering from this problem that we intend to solve, which I'll come on to, but that it's very early stages, and we are in the process of testing it with some of the biggest influencer agencies in the world and some of the biggest brands in the world, who all agree they've got this problem. I mean, I don't know how many of your listeners will remember, but in 2021, the music industry, or the 3 majors, at least 2 of the 3 majors in each case, sued Gymshark for $250 million and Bang Energy for $250 million for misuse of their music on TikTok. TikTok allows its users to use any song in its catalogue, right? Brands think that it's okay for them to do the same thing. It absolutely and categorically is not.
Yeah.
There was music and copyright infringement happening on a grand scale on that platform all the time. In fact, I've been alarmed when I speak to some of the agencies. I go, wait, we have to license the music? Right? We're just telling brands, use what you want. And it's so hard to find that a lot of them have been getting away with it. But more and more, the music industry is getting more litigious. And so it should. Now, the empathy I have on the brand side is that if you've ever tried to license a song from major rights holders, you'll know how frustrating it can be.
Yeah.
And if you're talking about 20 pieces of content a month, even if you went to the same label every time, every song is going to have 4 different publishers. And you have to contact and contract with 5 multinational companies who have never heard of you for under 10K. I mean, you're just not getting that closed in time. They all need to go out to the artist and the writers and get sign-off and brand approval. And so the goal is, well, I say the goal, we've built it. It works. We've built a platform where when you select a song from a major label, it informs that label and all the publishers involved with that song simultaneously. And each of those rights holders have signed up to be on board with the platform, and they've each been given a dashboard that tells them every time a request comes in. So it will start to become, the hope is it will start to become part of the everyday workflow of licensing teams within these majors, and it's essentially like a virtual assistant for them. If you think about it, when a brand approaches a label, they send an email. Hey, I want to use this song. Okay, what do you want to use the song for? TikTok. Right.
Yeah.
What is it? An ad? Is it organic content? How many channels are you going to use it on? Are you working with creators? Blah, all this stuff. You get 15 emails back and forth. No, you can't use it.
Yeah.
Right, okay. It took you probably 500 quid's worth of resource to get to a no.
Yeah.
You haven't even quoted. All of that should be cut out.
Yeah.
And then if you do get to quote them, you've got to send them off into the ether to work out what publishing is and who the writers are and who the publishers of the writers are, and then hope to get a response. No, this platform also cuts out that part of the problem. All the rights holders are involved from the get-go. No music on there has not been signed off for provisional use by brands. And when you click that button, you're requesting management sign-off for your brand to use that song on short-form vertical content. TikTok, Instagram Reels, Snapchat, and what am I missing? YouTube Shorts.
Yeah.
Blimey.
So very much simplifying the music licensing process. What we were discussing before we started, I think, but it sounds like you've got, I guess, features or technologies coming in the future that are going to further simplify this. Yeah,
I've got. I've spoken about this before publicly. I think we're a bit early on it. We built a solution for the metaverse. There is no background music solution for communal venues in the metaverse. If you think about, if you walk into Zara in the UK, there'll be music playing. You'll walk in and you'll hear it, and you'll walk out and you'll stop hearing it. They license that from the PRS. If you walked into Zara in the US, they would license it from ASCAP, BMI, CSAC, France, CSAC, Germany, Gamer, right? There is no global grant. It's only ever been defined locally. When you create a venue in the metaverse, you're going to have customers equally there from 200 territories worldwide.
Yeah.
And so we worked with lawyers to define the global grant for the public performance. Then we worked with rights holders who could grant us that. And then we built a geolocated virtual player for metaverses. So if you build a venue in, say, Decentraland or even in Roblox, you could use our product, Chorus, and say, I want good music playing when people come and visit my bar or my, right? And you'd be legally compensating all the artists.
Yeah.
But the playlist would only be playing in your venue. Now, I said Zara, when you walk in, you hear it. When you walk out, you don't hear it. That's very difficult to replicate in the metaverse.
Yeah.
Because there's no walls and there's no ears. But what we did was we built a geolocation tool and a token tracker. So if your venue decides to use the tool, you select your playlist, we ingest your coordinates, and we know to limit the stream to those coordinates. When a token, which is another word for an avatar, crosses your coordinates, it knows to deliver in real time the song that's playing from your chosen playlist to the device that is controlling that token.
Wow.
So, I mean, it sounds more complicated than it is, or I'm making it sound more grand.
Well, it sounds
than
impressive.
Yeah, but essentially, you would be able to walk into a virtual Zara and hear the same music that I'm hearing if I'm in that Zara.
Yeah.
And you would stop hearing it the moment you shut the door behind you, which is a virtual door and a virtual experience.
Yeah.
I think the metaverse had a very big peak and a very big trough in terms of its interest and its viability, and it's become a dirty word almost. But parts of the metaverse are inevitable. And wherever I see stock music, where I see a new fissure in the digital landscape, stock music, like water in a rock, stock music gets there on day one. If there's a crack, they're going to find it. And if I see stock music getting there first, I know it's an opportunity for the commercial music sector. Yeah. And I know it will need micro-licensing, and I know it will need a new commercial model, and I know it's definitely going to need technology.
Yeah.
And those are three things the music industry is just not set up to build together. They are not coalesced. They are not together.
Yeah.
You think about all innovation in the music industry has come from a third party, not from music companies, from tech companies. And where I see those three things, where I see a micro-licensing model being needed, new technology being needed, and a new grant of rights, I see it as those being the three boxes that I need ticking for me to say to my team, hey, this should be us.
Yeah. Okay. Very interesting, very impressive. I think what I was going to get to now is, I guess, your advice for creators. Whether you've got aspiring content creators or even brands, what advice do you have for them about effectively using music in their video content?
Well, I think choosing the right music is imperative, right? I mean, I've spoken a lot about stock music. Licked offers stock music as well, right? Just like Epidemic, but instead of just 40,000 tracks, we've got the 1.5 million mainstream songs. But things like suspense, thriller, drones, comedy, fantasy, action, adventure. You don't get that from Ed Sheeran. Right?
Yeah.
So you're going to need a full toolkit at your disposal, and that's what we look to offer. What's interesting that I think content creators should be aware of, and we've just discovered about ourselves, and we'll be making a lot more noise about this, but this is the first time we've talked about it publicly, actually, except for just recently on our socials. We've noticed that videos that use famous mainstream music, our customers that use mainstream music, the levels of engagement on their content since they started using Licked versus prior to using Licked has gone up 22%. That means more views, more likes, more comments, and longer watch time. With YouTube is deciding whether to promote your videos, it looks at an overall trend on your channel. And if it sees you're getting more views, more comments, more likes, and longer watch time, it's a green flag to them to say, hey, people are beginning to really enjoy this content. I'm going to start pitching it to more viewers.
Yeah.
You get more views, you earn more money. So we are actually seeing a lot of our customers come to us at one price point, start using a lot of the music, and within 3 months, they moved up the rate card a bit to a higher price point because they're getting more views.
Well, so, I mean, just on this point here, I don't think we've explained this, because if you are a content creator using Licked, you've got a tiered system based, right? Based on the audience that they have. Is that right?
That's right. So, whereas the music industry would typically charge you on a sliding scale based on the size of the artist, we fought a battle for that not to happen on the UGC platform. And what we said was we want to charge more when there's a bigger channel. You think about in Europe, the MCPS blankets, ITV pays more than Sky Arts because they've got more audience.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
They've got higher propensity to pay because they've got more views and sell more advertising. It's exactly the same thesis. What we said was Mr. Beast can pay X, right? But we shouldn't be charging everyone X. Most people should be paying 1% of X, right? And somewhere in between is the rest of the market. And so essentially, if you average fewer than 50,000 views of video on Licked, any song on the platform will cost you $8. If you end up at 1 million views per video, it will be closer to $80 or $100. And it goes all the way up to hundreds or thousands, right? But it's fair pay for the usage.
And it sounds like, I mean, that kind of whole ecosystem where you've got that tiered system, a creator that's not got much of an audience pays what they can basically afford.
Yeah.
They grow their audience off the back of using that commercial music, and then they go up a tier, which means the rights holders get more money, and this whole thing sort of feeds into itself, right?
Correct. That's exactly right. It's like we want to get people on the platform. We want to get the music. Listen, the size of the market is unbelievable. Let me talk you through some numbers quickly, right? There are 113 million active channels on YouTube. Most active channels on YouTube create 5 videos a month. 60 videos a year times 113 million. Let's keep the numbers small. Of those, 8%, 10 million, earn money from YouTube. So you've got 10 million channels making 60 videos a year each. 600 million videos. 600 million licensing leads.
Yeah.
84% of all videos on YouTube use some sort of music. Okay? But they're not using commercial music because it steals their income.
Yeah.
So if we can find a way for them to keep their income and work with the music and pay for it, then we've got about 450 million opportunities a year to charge somewhere between £6 and £10,000 for the use of a song. And typically, if you walk into, I don't know if you've had anyone in on your podcast from the commercial teams at labels, but they will all gather round their bigger artist management and say, your artist has a really engaged fan base. And the buzzword of the last few years has been monetizing fandom, right? Mm-hmm. You've got a really engaged fan base. How can we get £20 a year more out of these 2 million? Well, I've got an idea. Let them celebrate your artist by licensing their music in their hobby or their profession.
Yeah. Because
all they want to do is give you money and use the music in editorial content. They're not trying to abuse the artist. And so there was a massive, massive scalable opportunity of the music industry, which I really believe in. In fact, I think it's inevitable. We started off with people drip feeding us songs, and now almost everyone is scaling up their delivery to us because Licked is turning over millions in revenue. And we weren't doing that 3 years ago. Mr. Beast is a regular customer. The Sidemen are regular customers. Beta Squad are regular customers. Casey Neistat's become a customer. There are the biggest creators in the world are now grateful that this problem has been solved.
Incredible. And it all makes so much sense as well. And we've already spoken about like how much of a minefield licensing in general can be. Like, and obviously anything that can help simplify it is great. And I guess, I mean, ultimately, everyone is on. You said over 10,000 music companies you've got relationship rights holders.
10,000 rights holders signed. Yeah.
How on earth do you kind of maintain the relationships with these guys? And I guess you know how have you ended up with getting all of these people on board?
The first 275, I called and pitched and signed myself.
Right.
It was a painstaking process. I'm going to tell you a little, or you can keep this in or not, but just for people in this room, if you want to know like a founder's story, there was a label with a couple of albums that I really wanted on. We maybe had 1,000 tracks on Licked, and I called them and I said, look, this is what I'm doing. This is why you should be on board. I basically gave them the pitch that I gave you, but it was much smaller numbers because YouTube has exploded even since I started Licked. And he said, listen, come to our office, show me the demo, show me the software works, and we can talk. And I said to I had 2 or 3 members of staff. I had a CTO and an operations guy. And I said to my CTO, who was on his own, building the whole platform on his own, I need you not to code tomorrow. I need you to come with me to this pitch. I need you to demo the software. It's really important. And I won't ever name the label, but I met him. I met my CTO at a Pret round the corner from this office address. And then we was 5 minutes before the meeting. Come on, let's go. And we start walking, and I'm on a residential street. And I'm thinking, this can't be right. And I look and I go, well, that's the number. That's the house. That's the address. And I'm like, well, this house must get this all the time. Right? Clearly, there's an office block nearby with a similar address. So let me just go and ask them. And so I knock on the door, and this person answers. I say, I'm so sorry to bother you. I'm looking for a music label that's called XYZ. And he went, yeah, Paul, I'm here. And I was like, what the...
Yeah.
Anyway, I went in, and this was a 2-person record label.
Yeah.
And I went in and sat on their living room table, and he moved all these CDs around. My CTO's looking at me like I'm an absolute arsehole because I've taken him away from building the platform to sit in someone's living room.
Yeah.
We signed them. It went well. They then sent us a box full of CDs. So when we signed the agreement, their way of delivering the music to us was they sent us a crate of CDs, their entire back catalogue on CD. And I had to go to my operations guy, give him the credit card and send him over to Dixon's or Cohen's and get a CD burner. And we had to burn all the CDs into MP3s and upload them into our ingestion system.
Wow.
So the first 275 was me on the phones pitching. After that, you get a little bit of scale, and then you sign with third parties who are already paying out royalties from DSPs. And you go, hey, we're now a DSP.
Yeah.
And they start advertising you. So if you're going onto one of these platforms to check how your Spotify or your Deezer or your Amazon's performing, right? When am I going to get my royalties? What did I earn this month? Then they'll go to you, hey, there's a new DSP, learn about it here. And that's how we start scaling the business.
When you look back at your Licked basically and what have you achieved, what is your kind of proudest moment?
Oh, do you know, there have been so many, mate. Like I don't mean that to self-aggrandize. I just mean that, like, at each stage of your development, something else means more to you.
Yeah.
I can remember Chris MD. Some of your viewers' kids might know him. Chris is probably the biggest football YouTuber in the UK. He does lots of videos with the Sidemen and so on. And he licensed Love Me Again by John Newman. And he put it in a video, and it got 2.5 million views in the first 24 hours. And when someone played me the video, I was kind of nonplussed. And I was like, yeah, okay, well, how much did we pay him? Because we were working with creators to advertise the platform. And they said, no, dude, he came and he paid for it. And I was like, wait, what? How did he hear about us? Well, it worked, right? And we called the label and said, go and check your streaming stats. And that song had been plateaued and almost dead on streaming for about 5 years. And it did that.
Wow.
This is a video first podcast, right?
Yeah.
People can see what I'm doing.
Yeah.
It peaked.
Yeah.
And then we were like, Jesus Christ, we've got a case study.
Yeah.
We've give them a license fee, and they're going to earn from Spotify as well. This is what I've been talking about all this time. This is a no-brainer. Other than that, I mean, Mr. Beast is a phenomenon. I think he's the most culturally significant person in entertainment this decade. I think we'll look back in 2030 and go, that was Mr. Beast's decade.
Yeah.
He's changed the game in so many ways.
Yeah.
When his team call you and say, we want to use your platform, that's your dream.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean,
like, you go, hang on. If I say, when I started Licked, the vision was the biggest creators in the world licensing the biggest artists in the world. If we build it and make it possible, they will come. And when Coldplay and Dua Lipa and Bieber went live on the platform, and 2 months later Mr. Beast arrives on that very same platform and goes, shit, these guys are legit.
Yeah.
Then, and he's used us 15, 16 times.
Wow.
In that time. So, yeah.
Okay, so we're near the end.
Okay.
But there is one sort of question I have in particular.
Yeah.
Sorry, there's two, actually.
Mm-hmm.
One thing we haven't covered in terms of is AI.
Yeah.
We always come to it. With Licked, how are you going to navigate AI?
Yeah, it's a question I get asked a lot. I think there are some really good use cases for it within the business, that are already in place. We have built machine learning churn prediction. So when someone signs up to Licked now, we can tell within 48 hours if at that point they are more likely to retain or churn. And then we can change everything, every way the company interfaces with them accordingly.
Yeah.
Right? That's really helpful. It helps us keep the platform sticky, helps us retain customers, and increases what in business they call your LTV to CAC.
Right.
Your lifetime value of a customer versus the cost of acquiring a customer.
Yeah.
Search is another one, right? Like when you've got like Epidemic has 40,000 tracks. We have approaching millions, plural. Surfacing the right song can be a challenge. Understanding what the past behaviors of your customer have been and what they are likely to be using AI or machine learning is going to help us deliver them the best song for their content quicker. Stock music companies, I think, have a big question about AI, right? If you think about stock music companies' model, they pay up front to commission a song and own it and buy it off you. So if you think you take $3,000 on average per song, let's take a catalogue that's say 30,000 tracks large, that's 90 million in investment. I think they will be able to look at what's being licensed from their platform and save costs using AI, generative AI, to mimic their catalogue and create more variants, right? In terms of creating music on the fly for content creators, I think that is a use case. But there's one thing it will never do. It will never be able to create nostalgia. And when I looked at, let's go back to that Chris MD video, John Newman, Love Me Again on a football video. I didn't know why he'd chosen it until I read the comments. And the comments, every third comment was about the song. That song was on the menu page of FIFA 2014. And the engagement and love he got from reminding people of a point in their youth that is probably really special to them can never be replaced. And so I think there's a bigger threat to stock music than there is to mainstream music. I think as a production tool, it's going to be really handy to engineers and to producers, no doubt. But I don't want to get into the conversation around artist music being put out or be completely produced by AI. If you sent me a song today, Dan, and said, listen to this, and it was brilliant, and then I learned that you did it in 30 seconds through it would lose all its value, because I'd be like, I could have made it then. I'm going to go there and I'll do it, right? And that's great, but it's never going to remind me of something.
No.
It's never going to take me back to a special place. It's never going to bring up those memories that I had when I first heard it, or the visions I had, or the images in my brain, whatever it might be. So I think I mentioned before we started recording that I have a playlist in my Spotify called Shazam, and it's about discovering music from sync, and I think that it might have an impact there, right? If some of this starts getting placed, then the next generation might start discovering music that's been generated by AI through content creators' content.
Yeah.
But on the whole, I think they want to leverage the mutual value of a great song that people recognise, because that's what engages people in the video that they're creating. Yeah,
totally. Okay, so final question. I think so. Like it's. The music industry. I feel like there's a lot of negative talk out there at the moment about the music industry. At least that's what I'm seeing. Yeah. We're seeing a lot of layoffs, but also record revenues. Generally, I guess the question is, what are your thoughts about the state of the music industry right now?
It's a good question. I think it's really interesting times. You brought up the AI thing. I think we're at a crossroads again. Like, we look back at 99 and Napster. Yeah. And then 03 with iTunes, and then 08 with Spotify. Yeah. Like, you can only look back and see the journey, right? I think we'll look back at these 2 or 3 years and what we decide to do with it, right, as a seminal moment. I worry about generative music being flooding subscription services and the charts, right? I think there's a danger to that. I think I'm really excited about what it can do for producers and the whole production process. But look, the facts are that the music industry is turning over more than it did in its heyday. It's taken us a long time to get back from the trough of 1999. We're now generating more. Now, that doesn't account for inflation. So in real terms, it's not quite as much. But the direction of travel is solid, and I think everyone should be pleased with that. But if the music industry has been good at one thing, it's being able to walk into a dark room wearing a blindfold and still managing to find a gun and shoot itself in the foot. Right?
Yeah.
And it needs to work out how it embraces this technology. Because we know they resisted CDs, we know they resisted the MP3, we know they resisted streaming. They resisted licked. Not that I'm anywhere close to proving my case like any of those did, right?
Yeah.
But when it comes to adopting innovation, they're only slightly ahead of the Amish. And this one, they have to get right. They have to get it right. And so, I like seeing that they are working in partnership with some of the AI creators.
Yeah.
But what decisions are made over the next 2 to 4 years will shape the future of the industry irrevocably. And so I would urge them to work collaboratively and not just sue everyone that is working with AI. Find the right partners, the ones that are working ethically, and work alongside them, because putting your head under the sand is not a strategy.
I think that is a perfect way to end. There's a solid statement there.
Okay.
So yeah, I think, listen, what you're doing with Licked is incredible. I think it's an amazing solution to a massive problem. So excited to see what the future holds. And yeah, Paul Sampson, thank you very much, mate.
Thank you very much, Dan. I really enjoyed it, and you're very good at this.
Quality.